Okay, guys, welcome to this video and welcome to this podcast again. I'm your host, and I'm about to present to you the podcast with Frank Yang. For the viewers that know me, that have been watching the podcast for a while, that expect it to be in Dutch, usually, yes, this podcast is going to be different. Every once in a while, I have an international guest, and I can't help it. They don't speak Dutch, so we have to do it in English. For the other people that don't know me, that come from the audience of Frank Yang and that have been watching my podcast for the first time, well, welcome. My name is Dennis. I'm your host. I'm a psychologist as well. I help men, I guide men in their self-development journey. And before we start the podcast with Frank Yang, I want to show some of his work, his masterpiece. This guy is a genius, and the work speaks for itself. Okay, brother, welcome, Frank Yang. I've been really excited for this podcast, man, because up until now, I've only been doing like Dutch guests, and it's weird because for the last few hours, I've been watching some of your older videos again, and it felt like nostalgic. I want to start off with telling you what role you played within my own journey of self-development, so that people have a slightly better understanding why I invited you and why I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. And that's this. I'm 27 years old right now. And I think around my 16th, 17th year, I was in high school, and I had this odd sense I don't fit in here, but I don't have people that I connect with, that I resonate with too much. And I had this guy in my class. His name is Bram. And this was this guy that started to get me interested in NoFap. On a bus tour with school, he started to make me listen to Alan Watts. He was like, no, I don't listen to pop music, man, or to hip hop or to rap. I listen to Alan Watts. I was like, what the fuck is this weird guy saying? But then I listened to Alan Watts and I was like, huh? A new door went open for me. And then this guy showed your videos as well. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that without you, perhaps this whole podcast, perhaps my whole entrepreneurship wouldn't even have started. You've played a pivotal role in, first of all, mind-fucking me, but then also entertaining the idea that you don't have to conform with society standards. I always felt like I was surrounded with, I don't know, I don't want to make it like a degrading word, but like NPCs or normies or whatever. And you were there, like this glitch in the matrix, this person who didn't abide by whatever was normal, you know? So I want to give you the credits. You're an awesome human being. You've inspired me along the way, and I'm very, very grateful that we can do this podcast, brother. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Well, it's good to see you, brother. There's so many topics that I could dive into with you. But something that I'm interested in, or that I've been always wondering when I watch your videos is, look, sometimes I was feeling like you were playing a character. Like, what is this guy doing? You were doing all sorts of extraordinary stuff, like mind-fucking people, half naked somewhere in the gym, or actually getting naked, doing drunk naked deadlifts, having this very eccentric art, playing the violin and everything on a very high level. I don't like a lot of stuff combined that made it so extraordinary. What was going on in your mind all this time? Like, were you playing a role, or was it something that intrinsically just felt the right thing to do? Were you trying to explore things, pushing the envelope of what was possible? What was going in your mind with all these crazy videos?
It's both. I think I was playing a role, but I didn't realize it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but after I started to get into meditation and spirituality, which we're going to talk about later, I started to realize that everything I was doing, it was playing a role. There are many different roles that I was playing. You know, I had the bodybuilding role, I had the pickup artist role, I have the artist role, I have the intellectual role. I wanted to become like a philosopher, all kinds of roles, right? And then when I started to get into meditation, I was like, oh, this is just another role too. I was trying to become spiritual. I was trying to be a good meditator. So in a sense, meditation was no different from everything that I was doing. So I look at spirituality as this meta program that is used to dissolve all the previous programs. And each program will have a main character that is the role that I'm playing. That's maybe this the CEO program for some people. Maybe it's the NoFab is a program too, or like the artist program, the pickup program or whatever, gym program, right? So spirituality became a program itself. But then spirituality, after dissolving all the other programs using spirituality itself must also self-deconstruct in order to reach liberation. So that's pretty much the whole journey. But then I'm not discrediting all the roles that I played before, because they all played a role in getting to where I am today.
Brother, it's so fascinating because when I looked back at your older videos, also the one that were banned from YouTube and the ones on Vimeo, I saw that even at quite a young age, even in high school, you were making like videos where you were pranking people or whatever, but you always had this aura of, I don't want to say invincibility, but like you didn't seem to give a fuck. Was that already from a young age, or did you have to train yourself into that?
No. Well, the way I describe flow state is a contraction without resistance. The way I describe the natural state, the state of non-duality, is expansion without resistance. So you have flow state, contraction without resistance, and then you have the natural state, expansion without resistance. So before, there was a contraction in what I was doing. I could feel it in my body. When I go out naked on the street, I could feel a contraction in my body. No, I gave a fuck about not giving a fuck. But when I was doing it, it was flow state. But now it's flow state 24/7.
Like that contraction that you say, that actual, like that sensory experience of feeling that contraction. Where do you think it comes from? Is that something that's like innately wired in human beings? Is it some societal constructs of what we are like programmed with? What is that sensory experience?
Societal. Yeah, if society says you can't do this and you do this, you're gonna feel a contraction. A lot of it is also biological, because as biological organisms, we are programmed by our biology, biogenetics, to live in a state of harmony. So even our ancestors, when they're not in line with their own tribe, they might get killed. So you feel a contraction, you feel suffering where you're not in line, where you're not living in harmony with other human beings. But since we live in a society, in a civilization, we have all these different constraints. We're pretty much trading our freedom to do whatever the fuck we want for safety, for civilization. Now we can go on the street without worrying about getting shot at. I mean, in some places that's still a problem. But when we're hunters and gatherers, the chances of us getting killed by the hands of another man is 50%. If you look at Steven Pinker's book, The Better Part of Our Nature, The Better Angels of Our Nature, I think that's what it's called. Yeah, The Better Angels of Our Nature. Yeah, that's the book. He argues that we're actually living in the safest time in history. Even though there's still a lot of violence going on, it's been on the decline. So when you feel contracted, what it really means is that you are creating a separation. You are creating a separation between you and the environment, between you and other people. So when I went out of my way to do all this crazy shit, I feel a contraction because there's a part of me that realized that this is not in harmony with the rest of society, but I still went and did it. And when I did it, it was flow state, but it was a contracted flow state. I still felt like a separate self that is flowing. But the natural state of mind, when you see through the illusion of the separate self, which is pretty much spirituality in a nutshell, you're going to be in total expansion, boundless, without center or boundaries or separation, all the time, 24/7. And you can still do your thing. You can still do everything on a relative level. But everything will be done in a flow state. So it's a flow state without any suffering or contractions. So back then when I was doing a lot of I don't give a fuck shit, there was a lot of suffering. There was also some part of me that wanted to prove to other people that I didn't give a shit. There was a part of me that wanted to prove to other people that I was different, I was special.
How does one get from the point of feeling that contraction? Like everyone is inhibited by a sense of what is normative, what are oughts, what are shoulds, what are should nots, all these things that are deeply programmed within our subconscious mind throughout our individual lifetime, but also throughout like the whole zeitgeist of where our parents, our ancestral lineage grew up. These are things that get hardwired into our brain, into our genetics. But you say like when you play with these uncomfortable situations and you expose yourself to these situations where you feel these contractions. Let's say you expose yourself in public and doing behaviors that are not normative, and you feel this resistance. Eventually, you said you end up in a flow state, but what's the best way to dissolve through that barrier of contraction? Is it just simple exposure therapy like the way you did, or do people need to do the similar stuff to you, what you did? Or
see, for me, it was just by doing it. I never went to therapy, but looking back on it, because in a spirituality path, not only do you have to focus on like really deep insights into the nature of reality or the nature of mind, more like the ultimate truth of experience, you also have to work on yourself. You also have to do some therapy work, some shadow work, as they call it. Right?
Yeah,
but
Carl
I
Jung
never
stuff.
really officially did any shadow work. What I did was doing all these crazy videos. That was the way for me to look at myself. That was a way for me to confront my own limitations. That was a way for me to see where the contractions are. And then try to iron out that contraction, even if it's still on the relative level. Even if it's still not like quote unquote awakening. But still, that was a way for me to work through some of my trauma, some of my insecurities, just by doing it. If you're afraid of talking to girls, what's the best way to get over it? By doing some pickup, by talking to girls. In a respectful way, of course. Right? So to answer your question, I didn't really thought about too much about this, like whenever I did it, all the crazy stuff that I did, I just did it. But looking back on it, that was what's working through my conscious mind, subconscious mind, was that I was kind of working through some of my own fears and resistance. Not just dissolving it, but seeing how they are just roles, they're just contractions, and then by transcending them. And eventually, after doing all this crazy stuff, in a sense, I got it out of my system. So like I got all the ego stuff out of my system. That was one way to look at it. Of course, then there's meditation and contemplation and self-inquiry and stuff like that. That's also part of that journey. It's the same thing. Like people take psychedelics, they're afraid. What do? They do it. They confront their fears, right? You can say this whole entire path to self-development, or what I call self-transcendence, because for me, self-development taken to the max effort degree is self-transcendence. So this entire path of self-development or self-transcendence, if I can sum up in one sentence, it could be breaking through fear barriers. And what is the number one fear barrier? The fear of no self. So in a sense, all those things that I used to do, all the crazy stuff, it's in a way for me to protect the fact that there is no self in the center that's in control of anything. So I was trying to take control of my life, so to speak. Yeah. But then when you take that to the extreme, you realize that there is no one in the center, no agent in the center that's controlling everything. Everything just happening by itself. That's how you enter flow state with a capital C, 24/7. Because now there is just a movement. Now there is just a movement of the universe happening to itself. Without an experiencer, without a seer, observer, thinker, doer. Yeah.
Look, when you were talking about like ironing out whatever residue was left in your nervous system, something along the lines of that, I'm a very visual person, and what I saw is like everyone has particular programs in their nervous system that could be either from traumas, from whatever, and often these programs, because the nervous system is like a supercomputer which contains by default programs, whatever they are, good programs, bad programs, anything, and we are often unconscious of these programs. That's what Carl Jung calls the shadow, like the things that you don't look at, that are outside of your view. And when you expose yourself to these very uncomfortable situations, you get instant feedback, because when you're in your comfort zone, you're not getting triggered in a particular way, right? But these discomfortable, uncomfortable situations, they poke through your nervous system, and all the stuff that are hidden in the shadow, they come out instantly. It's like a hardcore form of shadow work, what you're basically doing. And that's why it relates to enlightenment so well, because you're illumining the parts of yourself that were unknown.
Yes, you bring the conscious to the unconscious. Bring the shadow to the light. So you bring consciousness
It's
to the unconscious and making the unconscious conscious.
it's beautiful, man. And I wonder, like a lot of people where I come from, at least, I don't know how it was there where you grew up, but we were just living life on autopilot, and we were, quote unquote, in the matrix, just getting to the next step, as Alan Watts would say, chasing the golden goodie, going through high school in order to prepare for something else, to prepare for the grown-up life, and then eventually coming to the realization that we were chasing something that was like a donkey chasing a carrot. It was never there, actually. But how come that from such a young age you were intuitively navigating towards these behaviors, towards these philosophical routes, or whatever you'd like to call them? Was there like a mentor in your life? Were there particular experiences that led you to this interest? Or
No, I think it's just an intrinsic desire, you can call it like that, a desire to transcend, a desire to take things
already from such a young age?
Yeah, since I was like 14 years old. You've seen my videos of me like throwing shit in my house and then like dropping on my head. I was like, okay, I'm gonna throw a small ball and then into the air and then try to hit myself with it. And then the next one, I'm gonna do a bigger ball and a bigger ball. And then I'm gonna do a bicycle. Now I'm gonna do a trash can. Instead with lifting weights, it's like, okay, now I can bench 135 pounds. What's next? 185. What's next? 205. Same with consciousness. Now I access the first 4 jhanas. What's next? The formless jhanas. What's next? Letting go of the jhanas and enter cessation. What's next? There's always this intrinsic desire to transcend to the next level. So you transcend even the transcendence at the end. You go beyond the beyond. Because if you look at consciousness doesn't really have a level. Infinity doesn't have a level. If something's boundless, they can't have levels to it. There's no dimensions, no distance, no space, no time. But it contains all space and time. It contains all dimensions. It contains all the finite levels through this infinite space, right? So if consciousness doesn't have levels, then all the levels that you experienced before are just how the mind responds to true nature, which is empty and luminous. So by experimenting with all those different levels, I was able to see that there are no levels. That everything just this is it. Right here is nirvana. Nirvana is samsara, formless emptiness. This is your true nature right here, right now. The absolute includes the relatives.
Yes, it's by embodying all these different roles that you realize that they are roles. Because if you stay stuck in one particular, let's say, level or one particular end of the spectrum, you get identified. It's like everyone is, per definition, is wearing a mask, a facade, or as Alan Watts would like to call it, a persona. Like you're playing a role. That's by default the case. But once you keep the same role for a perpetual state of time, then the mask starts to how do you say it? Like to melt with your real face. It starts to get glued, and you start to mistake yourself for the role that you're playing. And it feels like you started to play so many roles, like the bodybuilder, the pickup guy, the whatever you said, like the intellectual guy, to get loose from all these roles, to eventually take one step back and realize that they were all just different, like, how do you say it? Like
they're empty. Yeah, all the roles were empty. Yeah, it was by switching all those different roles that I realized that no role is the true role. So there's not actually no masks at all, because every mask that you put on is empty too. You see what I mean? Because form and emptiness is one thing. So people are like, okay, if you take off your mask, what's left? What's left is this boundless awareness. You can call it like that, right? But the mask that you put on is also part of that empty awareness that's manifested as form. So by switching all those different roles and eventually coming to a role of spirituality, I realized that all those are just roles. But then, because the ultimate and the relative are the same, every role that you play, every mask that you have on is also the divine. There's nothing behind anything, so to speak. So that's the ultimate realization of non-duality. There's no layers, no levels. Same thing I was talking about. But by getting to that insight, one way to go about it, which is the way I did it, is by experimenting with many different roles to see that, oh, I'm not satisfied with this role. Next role, not satisfied. Next role. Why is it I'm not satisfied? Because all those roles are empty, which also means that they're all full. So now coming full circle, I can do the bodybuilding role, I can do the artist role, but there's no attachment to it. I just see through that it's a role and I play it. But before there was identification to it, there's suffering in there because I was clinging onto the role as if it was a real me. But now there is no real me. I can play any me that I want. So that's the beauty of it.
You also did 5-MeO DMT, right?
Yeah, the last time I did it was 2018. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a bit more on your experience with 5-MeO DMT? And for the people that don't know what it is, could you also elaborate a bit on that?
Oh, to me, the experience of psychedelics, or any psychedelics for that matter, is just taking off all your conditionings and programs and lenses of perception all at once. Well, at least for 5-MeO DMT, that's what I felt like. Like all the program got dissolved in 5 seconds. And then you just get this empty luminosity, the nature of mind, where everything's interconnected. There's no center, no boundaries, no separation. LSD or mushrooms are a slow way to dissolve your programs. Even meditative states like jhanas, they're also just a way for you to dissolve your programs. That's why the Buddha said even jhanas don't lead to awakening, right? Jhanas are a good way for you to see how everything's a fabrication. So you dissolve the fabrication layer by layer by layer by layer until you reach the unconditioned. So 5-MeO DMT and jhanas are actually just the same thing. They're just tools for you to dissolve the solidity of your lenses of perception, your identities, the roles that you play, your beliefs, the solidity of the body, the limitations of the mind. All those are programs, are boxes. So 5-MeO DMT dissolve all those boxes very quickly, instantaneously. So I would say that my experience right now in this moment, my day-to-day, moment-to-moment experience is actually no different from my breakthrough in 5-MeO DMT. And that's just the natural state of mind that everybody has right now without the limitations slapped on top of it. Yeah, so the Buddha said everybody's already like awakened. Yeah, that's true. It's just the degree of solidity, degree of contractions. Every program creates a kind of a contraction in the body. Every false identity creates a contraction in the body. And psychedelics and meditations or yoga are just a way for you to dissolve those boxes, those beliefs. That's all there is.
Do you think then that there is like a downside or a con to, I feel like psychedelics can be like the highway. You get quicker to particular insights. Can there be downsides to that as well?
Yeah, of course. Psychedelics is a double-edged sword. Same with meditation, actually. People can get stuck in jhanas or meditative states and absorptions. And they can create a new identity through those experiences. Even if you reach non-duality, you can still attach your identity to this vast infinite space. That's why people sometimes get like God complexes. Because a part of the self that hasn't been completely dissolved is attached to that state. Even if that state is permanent, there's still a risk for your ego, the remainder of your ego or the rest of your condition that hasn't been completely dissolved or seen through, to rarefy itself or transfer itself to even non-dual awareness. That's why people like go around and say, oh, I am God after a psychedelic trip, or even, see people like maybe they have a spiritual breakthrough and they immediately start talking about it and they think they know the answers to everything, right? In Zen, they say you have to wash away even the stink of your awakening. So there's danger to any kind of breakthrough, either on psychedelics or not, or meditation. Just like when you become a really good pickup artist, the mind is going to morph itself into that identity. Same thing, yeah. The thing about psychedelics is that it gives you such a big glimpse so fast that when you contract back very quickly too, right? So that's the danger of psychedelics. It's kind of like the hawk, the hawk, when he gets angry, he blows up to this like big green monster, right? But then when he's not angry anymore, he contracts back to like a normal human being. And that's the same analogy with psychedelics, yeah. Psychedelics is a great tool though. Yeah, it gives you glimpses or previews into what's possible. But then you cannot cling on to any psychedelic experiences. You don't want to make psychedelic experiences into not just the self, but into some kind of a truth about the nature of reality. Because everything you experience with psychedelics is just a byproduct and a side effect of the dissolution of the conditionings that you have. So you're just swimming in your own conditioning when you see the psychedelic trips. And if you come from like a Buddhist background, you see everything as Buddha. If you come from a Christian background, you're going to see everything as like Christ consciousness. If you come from a materialistic paradigm, you're like, oh, this is just a brain. So the point is, psychedelics are a very good way for you to dissolve programmings and conditionings. But it's just as easy for you to be attached to those experiences and those conditions and reinforces it and create even more conditionings around the conditionings. So my advice for people to do psychedelics for the spiritual path is it's very useful, but let go of any experiences that you experience on psychedelic and just let it do the work. Let it dissolve you and don't try to intellectualize it. Don't cling your ego onto it. Don't get clean up in experiences or bliss or anything like that. Same with any kind of meditation.
But that's so hard for humans. We are so thirsty for an identity, so thirsty for some sort of, Terence McKenna always said it beautiful. It's like when you have this mystical experience, it feels like there is gold flowing through your hands, but you cannot grasp it.
Yeah.
But humans have the appetite to grasp. We want to have something substantial,
Yeah, even when you have a really deep realization into like unbounded consciousness, even if that's your day-to-day, moment-to-moment experiences, you can still try to grasp onto it. But if you go deeper and deeper, you see that you can't grasp onto that either. You can't grasp onto anything. You can't even grasp onto like Brahman or Godhead.
Along your journey, you're a mix of so many different things. Like you radiate some sense of like serenity and peacefulness and some sort of inner peace. But on the same time, you were doing also a lot of things that could be classified as like degenerate, like the whiskey, the binge smoking whilst drinking milk and doing sprints, all sort of stuff, like things that people in the self-help corner would label as like, not optimal for your health, right? I wonder how you dealt with the impact of all these, let's say, degenerate behaviors, because in my personal journey, when I would do things that weren't good for my body, I would instantly feel the impact, and it could also impact my mind, and it would take away my inner peace. But somehow you seem to drift through all of this, like effortlessly.
That's interesting.
Almost.
Yeah, I have two things to say about that. One is that I didn't resist that. The resistance is what's creating some of the stressors that go along with that. Not to say that drinking alcohol in a gym is a good idea. It's definitely not a good idea. But I didn't resist that. So by not resisting that, I sort of eliminated extra stressors that would cause even more harm. Right? So that's another way for me to let go. It's like, okay, I'm going to go do all this crazy shit and eat like shit some of the time. Not all the time, Some of the times I was just doing it for the video. But I did eat like shit. And I did do a lot of things that were not very healthy. But then on one hand, yeah, it's not really good for your body. I don't know if I'll do it again, but whatever, what's done is done. On the other hand, because I didn't resist that, the impact of those stressors weren't as heavy. Let's say I created another contraction on top of that and do all over it. Be like, fuck, man. It's like NoFap, Some people get into NoFap and NoFap for like 2 months. And then they create this identity of a new NoFabber. And then that's actually creating more contraction and suffering. So my advice is always find the middle way.
Look,
But let me say one more thing first. But before I started to get into meditation, before my awareness is more enhanced, I couldn't even tell the difference that much, to be honest, because I was so unaware. In a sense, that's a way for me to let go too, because I'm so unaware what the fuck is going on. I just did it anyway. So there's no extra awareness or contraction or inner critic that is like lacing over on top of that pure action of drinking whiskey at the gym. But at the same time, I was also not very aware because I didn't really practice any meditation or anything like that. But once I started to do meditation, take meditation more seriously, I could feel the effect more and more and more. And nowadays, I barely drink or smoke.
Yeah, what you just described with becoming more aware, the analogy that really strikes a chord for me is, in 2006, the YouTube videos were on like resolution 144p or whatever. Like the resolution was so low that you could just see pixels and some colors, and just some differentiated lines. But the sharper your awareness gets, it feels like you're increasing the resolution so that every micro pixel of your internal landscape becomes aware.
Yes, exactly. That's why the deeper you get into the spiritual path, the less you're able to get away with unethical behaviors.
Yeah, your conscious also becomes more clear because your conscience, not your consciousness. Yeah, but your conscience, like the voice in your head that whispers whether like you're in alignment with your higher self or not, or however you want to call it, that is a voice that whispers. And usually a lot of people can seemingly get away with not listening to their conscience because it's whispering and it's overshadowed by the rationalizations, because the mind can always create like very valid arguments why it's okay to do stupid shit. But then there's the conscience that's non-dual. It just knows. It's the voice from the heart, the voice from the gut, the intuition, however you want to call it. And the more your attention, your awareness sharpens, the better you can listen to that as well.
Yes. Spirituality is also a double-edged sword because some people, they recognize emptiness and they do shitty things with it. We call them Zen devils. A lot of teachers that abuse their students, and those teachers aren't like fakes too. Like it's obvious they had some kind of a realization, right? Maybe it's not completely integrated. They still have some shadows there that haven't worked through, right? But recognizing non-self, you can very easily spiritual bypass because now you don't get triggered anymore. What if you just go and fuck around with other people? That could be very dangerous. That's why, like in traditions, they emphasize on having a lineage or having a teacher or having emphasis on compassion and ethics, because they go hand in hand. You know, if you recognize emptiness and dependent origination, you also have to recognize that, you know, just because you are free of suffering, it doesn't mean that other people are not free of suffering. Right. And I like the analogy that you made about the resolution. Yeah. If you look at my past videos, when I was very unaware, the resolution was very low. That's only because, you know, that was like 10, 20 years ago. And my analogy for this perceptual shift into non-duality is from 720 to 1080 to 4K to 8K 360. Now your awareness is just panoramic and it's on 8K all the time. Yeah. But if you're in this thing all the time, any kind of little contractions can be very intense. That's why you're able to get away with less shady stuff that you do in life and to other people. But maybe that's because I have a conscience. But if you take a psychopath, like my early example, maybe some of those spiritual teachers that have recognized emptiness or, you know, unbounded consciousness, but maybe their conscious level isn't that high. Maybe that's just how they're wired or whatever. So they're able to get away with it. So maybe they need a little bit of morality training.
But what do you think is the nature of psychopathy then? Is it something that like, it's like a birth defect? Do you think it has something to do with trauma, or what do you think?
I'm not sure. Maybe a little bit of everything. Yeah, just like everything else, is nature and nurture both. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to comment too much on that because I'm not a psychotherapist. But I did struggle with, you know, mental illnesses before, but they've been completely eliminated. You know, I was a sex addict, bipolar, maybe personality disorder. Yeah.
Yeah, I can share the sex addiction. I don't know how your journey's been with that. Like for me, it was during my puberty. And when looking back at the sex addiction, because I think a lot of men struggle with it in some sort of form, whether it's masturbation, pornography, or actual sex, or just the intention of women, like the thirst tripping, whatever. I think of course, obviously it comes from some sort of lack of intimacy. But I think when our brain gets hijacked and starts to perceive these false forms of intimacy, like let's say jacking off to a screen, which is only a digital representation of the real deal, your brain gets hijacked and it sort of simulates real connection without the healthy proportion, with the oxytocin and all the healthy levels of bonding hormones, and without the real deal. And once your brain gets hijacked, it you sort of simulate like, oh, I am bonding, I'm connecting, but there's no real connection. There's no electromagnetic field of the heart that's connecting with you, the actual life force. And I think that's how people get more and more isolated over time. And it becomes like this ditch where it becomes very hard to escape. Could you share a bit more then about your journey with, your relation to sexuality in general?
Well, I used to watch porn and masturbate like 5 times a day. And then before, if I don't fuck a new girl every week, I get depressed. Mm-hmm. That's how severe it was. But nowadays, I don't think about sex unless I'm having sex. And when I'm having sex, I don't think about sex either because I'm totally present. So I rarely get horny anymore. I rarely masturbate, which is incredible compared to how I was before. But that's just a byproduct of the realization and the insight. Yeah, there's no more craving for sex when it's not present. But when it is present, when I am having sex, I'm able to enjoy it more. But when it's over, it's over. I don't think about it. I don't masturbate to it. Yeah, there's no craving for sex that is going to happen in the future. There's some reminiscence about the sex I had in the past. So that takes away most of your suffering around sexuality. And my identity is not attached to sex. Even if I do have sex now, I don't feel like there's a sense of self that's getting triggered, that's getting fulfilled. It's just a very pure action of sex. It's just nature's unfoldment. There's nobody here that's having sex, but that doesn't mean that the Mitsu cannot enjoy sex. In fact, the Mitsu can enjoy sex even more without the attachment to it. That's why I always say the spiritual path, you can have your cake and eat it too. You get to have everything you had before. Sometimes you have to let it go for a little bit just to kind of rewire your brain into like dissolving the conditionings. But once you start to integrate some of your old patterns into the light, then you see that you can actually perform better. I'm better at violin now. I'm better at video editing, but I'm way less attached to them. I'm better at bodybuilding too. Like I don't really look at myself in the mirror and take pictures of my body anymore. But actually, like my physical conditioning has been like at the peak of my life right now. The less you care about something, the more you have it in a sense. So once you let go of something, it's actually the best way to have it. So that's another paradox on the path to self-transcendence. To find the self, you forget the self.
I think that's the true meaning of embodiment. Because my pitfall within the spiritual journey was also like, first of all, I was very young. So a lot of this spiritual insight, the mystical insight that you have, it becomes very unintegrated, which led in my personal life to just philosophizing and having all these ideologies and cognitive insights about what non-duality is and whatever. But eventually I was not like, how do you say it? In the organic, actual 3D world where my meat suit is taking part in.
It's not in body, yeah. Yeah, I went through that myself.
Yeah, and now I feel like I let go of the whole spiritual thing. Of course, there's the ground of being, this ground of presence, this ground of embodying a particular state of consciousness, trying to be present, embodying my body, but then actually fully partaking in this 3D game where my meat suit is. Because I think that is equally important to realizing all of it, because there is a reason that we are in this Maya, in this illusion, in this grand scheme of holographic reality, however you want to call it. There is a reason that we are playing this game. And I feel like nature has, regardless of what your ideological beliefs are, nature has particular goals, which is to flourish, which is to reproduce, to grow. And I believe everyone is born with some kind of unpacked or like some sort of hidden gem within them. Everyone has some part to play in the bigger scheme of things, and the goal is to unfold whatever is within you. That could be for someone to build beautiful gardens. For another one, it's to be a poet. For another one, it's to be the best writer. Whatever, anything. And I think in order to flourish in that sort of state, you have to be able to fully partake in it. And even let go of the spiritual insight, because that's here in the cloud,
To comment on what you just said, I agree completely. I always emphasize on not, getting stuck in the absolute, because people get into the spiritual path, they can easily just get stuck in the transcendental. But in order to become the full mountain, not only do you have to climb onto the top of the mountain, you have to climb down to become the whole mountain. So the integration part is actually half of the journey. And the realization is that nirvana is samsara. The realization is that there's nothing but the matrix. Because when you say, though, there's something beyond the matrix, there's this like unmanifested, this transcendental realm beyond the matrix. Sure, you have experiences like that, but then the deeper insight is that they're all fabrications of the mind, right? So if there is nothing beyond the matrix, that means you want to be in the world, but not of the world. The last picture of the 10 ox herding picture in Zen Buddhism is just this guy with a beer belly hanging out in the marketplace, doing whatever the fuck he wants to do. But whatever he does is wisdom and love, because he doesn't have any resistance, because he's nature itself. And when you said the evolution of nature, right? nature evolves through the course of the least resistance. So talking about the contractions and letting go of resistance, that's all there is to the spiritual path. You dissolve all the solidity in your body from solidity to liquid to smoke and then to air. But then you realize that the air and the solid are made of the same no thing. It's just different degree of density. So you see that there is nothing but the conditionality that's totally impersonal. That is just the nature of the universe. And you disappear into this conditionality because to be apart from this conditionality, first of all, you can't be apart from this conditionality, right? But you might feel like you can stand apart from this conditionality. Thinking that you're apart from this conditionality is what's creating the separate self, the separate doer, the separate agent. When you just totally disappear into the cosmic condition of the universe, then it's free flow state 24/7 with a capital F. That's another way to describe the path. So you just become one with the universe, and you not only do you become one with the universe, you also get to keep your individuality. So you become the nothing that is the everything, but then you also manifest it into the something. It's easy to get stuck in that, oh, there's no self here, I don't want to do anything. It's also easy to get stuck in there's only the self, I'm just going to do everything what my ego says. Both sides of the extreme is the wrong view. The right view, quote unquote, is the middle way. How do you merge the absolute, the emptiness, with the form, with the relative, until there's no more distinction? Your personal will and your desire becomes the universal will and the universal desire. That to me is finding your true purpose. And for some people going on the spiritual path, they might have phases where everything that they used to do before, because it was all done according to the ego, they don't want to do it anymore. For example, for me, gym was one of the things. It's like there were phases where I felt like just working out at the gym feels so inauthentic. But that's another thought too. Maybe for some people, they just have to completely drop to everything that they're doing. But for me, like I get to do everything I was doing before because what I did before was also very closely aligned to true nature. I just didn't recognize it. So another way to put it is that you want to merge this individual body mind's true nature, how you're wired, with the true nature of the universe until they become one. So you're just removing all the conditionalities, all the conditionings, and all the lenses of perception, all the programs that's getting in the way of this Mitsu. Once you remove that, the Mitsu is able to freely express what it's always been designed to do through the course of nature.
You describe a beautiful process that can be, there are a lot of metaphors, like stripping away the layers of the onion, only to realize that there is no core or whatever. Like there's some sort of peeling away the layers and of programming, conditioning, whatever. Or also, you know about Osho, right?
Yeah, I love Osho.
Yeah, now I know. What I was going to ask. So you describe this process of like stripping away layers, like in a similar fashion as you peel layers of an onion only to realize that there is no core. What do you think the role is of sexual energy within this process? Because within all sorts of self-development tools and also in these esoteric practices, you have tantra, you have yoga practices that regulate the pranayama, the breathing, which is intertwined with the sexual energy as well. So what do you think is the role of sexual energy in this process of becoming more authentic, connecting more with your natural self, peeling away the layers?
I think it's a big one. Yeah, because I always say this path is about becoming the energy of the universe. So you're actually fucking with the most powerful force in existence. And that force is you. And that force is just the nature's energy itself. Pure, raw, and unfiltered. And sexuality is one of those energies that comes very close to the original source of the universe because it's reproductive. How does the universe come into being? Through reproduction. Whether that's in reproduction between different humans or species, or even just the birth of a planet. There's some kind of energy in there. What the Greeks call eros, the erotic energy.
Yeah.
That's perpetuating the form into existence. So sexual energy, when manifested in humans, it's a very powerful force. Again, it's a double-edged sword. You can get lost in the sexual energy because it's so powerful, because it's so closely related to the universal energy. But at the same time, if you practice Tantra and transform and transmute that energy into quote unquote positive means, then the potentiality is infinite. So that's another thing that I integrated into the void is sex. So now when I have sex, it's a very different experience. Like I practice a lot of tantric sex right now. Like, sometimes doing it really slow, just being completely connected in the non-dual state with my partner. Just really like playing around with the sexual energy instead of just following the instinct to like ejaculate right away. I play around with the energy, let the energy be absorbed in my body, and then healing my system. It's almost like this reciprocal feedback loop. You want to come, but then you kind of take that energy and bring it to your head, and then going down to your organ again in this like feedback loop that's just constantly like enhancing the energy. And the energy can be used in all different kinds of ways, not just sexually, but creatively. That's why the NoFap sexual transmutation comes in, right? When you transform that sexual energy, that very primal energy of the universe into creative endeavors, it's very powerful because the sexual energy is the creative energy. Because what is the act of creation? It's reproduction. That's also why a lot of people that get into spiritual paths, they used to be really into sex. They were into pickup or bodybuilding. They were very sexual because they kind of know, even unconsciously, they're fucking with the sexual energy. But now they're more wise. They can transmute that sexual energy into quote unquote higher means. When you experience something like the bliss and the ecstasy of a mystical experience, it's almost like coming. Instead of coming in the body, you're coming with your soul, in a sense. And the way I describe this moment-to-moment experience of non-duality is like everything is penetrating each other because there's no distance, no separation, no solidity. So every sensation that arises within this field for me feels like sex. It's almost like God is fucking itself raw without a condom. And sex, artistic creations, or even intellectual understanding, all those things on the relative level, or even a romantic relationship, that's a big one. They're just a middleman to truth realization. Some people get lost in it, but some people are able to see bigger. Okay, this, whatever it is that I'm trying to find through sex, through making money, is actually just a middleman. It's just a means to an end. What I really want is to return to my true nature, is to be in unity, is to be whole, is to access non-dual reality. Why do you have sex? Why do you take drugs? Why do you drink alcohol? You want to feel whole. Why do you buy nice cars? Subconsciously, you want to feel whole. So, in a sense, everybody's doing all that stuff in order to find their true nature, to return home. But some of them don't recognize it and they just keep doing their relative things over and over again. But some people, they do it over and over again. They experience immense suffering from doing that, and then they pop. Or they have some glimpses. They're like, oh, wait a second. This is what I was looking for. But whatever he did before, whatever I did before, is never apart from this too. It's also part of it. You've always been whole. You just pretend that you're a separate self. That's it. So sex and orgasms and romantic relationships, they are a very good way for you to get the taste of one taste.
I think that what you just described, like this sense of separation, this sense of not feeling whole, is the core trauma, or, I know this word trauma is abused nowadays, but I describe it as the core trauma of humans, because this neurotic tendency that humans have to feel so separate and to just keep running away from ourselves, You know, why are we so overstimulated nowadays? Because we are buying into the stimulation. Why are we buying into all the stimulation, this overstimulation, the Netflix, the high fructose corn syrup, the compulsively engaging in social activities, always having screens on, all this neurotic behavior? Why is it? Why are we buying into it? Because we're running away from ourselves. And why are we running away from ourselves? Because the noise of the outside world is covering something in the inside that we do not want to feel. And that's that sense of emptiness. And I think if you penetrate with your awareness deep enough through the emptiness.
Yes, that's the key. You have to go deeper. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah, so that's the paradox you're describing right now. Yeah. It's like we're trying to do everything to avoid the void that is what we are. But we don't know that this void is actually infinitely full. Is full of potentiality. It's the most creative genius in existence because it is existence itself. So it's the paradox is that we're trying to run away from it, but at the same time, we want to go back into it. So like you say, you just gotta go all the way in there to see it. Some people have a little glimpse of it and they realize it. You know, some people have like a bigger glimpse and then they come back from it and they rearrange their life to realign itself to this realization and just keep doing the integration thing, keep doing the opening thing over and over again. Yeah. So you're right. The trauma of existence. You know, in my videos, I talk a lot about like dissolving the perceptual center, this knots of perception that is sitting in the center of your head that's pretending to look out into the world, that's creating the subject-object duality. So a lot of practices that I talk about, like vipassana or self-inquiry, they're designed around seeing through that duality. You know, you use a laser beam of your awareness to not just dissolve your entire body into empty space and batteries, dissolve all the batteries, but you're also dissolving the meditator itself. You're dissolving the observer. But why do we have an observer? Because we're traumatized. When we're born into this world, the moment that your parents gave you a name, that's when the observer started to become created. That's when the observer started to create itself, yeah. And then you get this illusionary sense of there's someone in here looking out into the world. But as a matter of direct experience, without that lens of perception, it's just a universe perceiving itself, pretty much.
But is it then the nature of reality that life itself, like organic life, which we are a part of, we are a vessel within the great interplay of life itself, has to go through duality before it can transcend duality?
Yes, I agree completely. Yeah. It's almost like God is playing hide and seek with itself. See, the recognition is that there was never a duality. Even duality is non-dual. So you're just recognizing what's always there. You're just letting go of the knots of perception. You're letting go of the solidity in experience. That's what you're letting go of. You're not discarding anything. A lot of people get to the spiritual path and they become very nihilistic. They're like, I want to annihilate myself. You know, Buddha talked about 3 kinds of cravings. One is sensual craving, one is craving for existence, and one is craving for non-existence. Then you want to find the middle way. You want to transcend existence and non-existence. You want to exist in the world fully by not being in the world. So you want to experience duality from the non-dual perspective and see that there's always only duality. But this duality is empty, it's non-dual. See, that's the paradox.
I want to challenge you, Frank, because obviously on a, I don't know, logical or a meta level, all that you say makes a lot of sense about the duality and the non-duality and transcendence. But human life, nonetheless, can be very arduous, can be very tough, very dense, if we keep talking in the same words. Like a very dense experience, like a depression can feel very filthy and very... Can't it be dangerous that we can use this cognitive framework of spirituality, like let's say saying that everything is non-dual, depression is the same as all the other experiences, they're all part of the same spectrum, but the spectrum itself, you can transcend that. Can these insights become like a cognitive buffer to bypass the direct experience?
Of course. Yeah, that's called spiritual bypassing. And there are different ways that you can spiritual bypass. If a person still haven't had an experiential insight into non-duality, they can spiritual bypass with concepts, like you just said. And I did a lot of that as well. Like I use spiritual concepts as a way to mentally masturbate my way out of other concepts that I don't want to look at, or feelings that I don't want to look at. Because the only reason why we're stuck in our head all day long is because we don't want to feel our feels. So feeling your feelings honestly and directly is one of the major practices in spirituality. It's also part of shadow work. You want to accept all the bad parts of you and seeing that there are no bad parts. And by doing that, you have to feel them with complete honesty, authenticity, and acceptance. That's where compassion comes in. Self-compassion, which will lead to the compassion for other human beings. So another way to look at spiritual bypassing is spiritual bypassing, even when you're in non-duality, which I've been talking about recently. Because a lot of people in the non-dual circle, they have realized emptiness, or at least the beginning stage of emptiness. They have realized non-dual awareness, at least the initial stages of non-dual awareness. But they're not completely integrated. So they will use the vastness of non-dual awareness, the bliss of non-dual awareness, to suppress some of their feelings. And I did that for a while as well. But if you go deeper, you can't do that anymore. The feelings are going to come up. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because truth doesn't let you, you can't cheat truth. Yeah. Truth is going to uncover and reveal whatever that needs to be looked at for the integration process to complete itself. Yeah. So you can definitely spiritual bypass. But if you're honest and sincere, truth or reality is not going to let you do that. You can do that for a little while, but you can lie to yourself, but you can't lie to reality.
What do you make of current times on a geopolitical level? Like, it seems like on a grand scheme of things, we've become so disconnected, so divided, so like, I don't watch a lot of news personally, but every now and then when I see something, it's usually miserable. What do you make of all of this?
I don't have much thought about that. Like, from the non-dual perspective that I hold right now, everything's perfect the way it is. But I guess you can spiritual bypass with this, people can take this the wrong way. But just because everything's perfect the way it is, doesn't mean that you sit around and do nothing. Right? You can still want to change the world, want to change yourself, while still abiding in non-duality where everything's perfect. Because everything is perfect doesn't mean everything is perfect. It just means even imperfection is unconditionally loved and accepted. It's from that space that you can truly make changes. Ramana Maharshi said, to try to change the world without recognizing your true nature first is like putting leather on I forgot his exact quote, but he said the first step into changing the world is to change yourself first. And the ultimate way to change yourself is to recognize that there is no separate self.
It's interesting that you say this, because I use the metaphor for my clients, and he had this kind of like rescuer syndrome. He wanted to rescue all his, like, he had this mystical insight and he felt like he had to save his family members and his best friends from ignorance, And I use this metaphor for him. Like, let's say you're let's say you're dying on you're on your deathbed and you know that you only have like a few days left and it's certain. What sort of people do you want around your bed? Do you want someone who's going to affirm how miserable you are and whatever, or someone that knows deep down in their heart that it is okay and that you are okay, and or do you want someone who's neurotically trying to help you? Oh, here's some flowers and chill. It's okay.
Yeah, that's another way to spiritual bypass, actually, what you just said. Because some people can have a really profound spiritual breakthrough and their ego will hijack that experiencer. into some kind of a healer or some kind of a messiah where you have to save everybody. Oh, I'm the
Yeah.
enlightened the world. Not only I know the truth, everybody is suffering. I feel bad for them. They're ignorant. I used to have moments like this, but I see through them very quickly. Now I do my part to help other people, but it doesn't seem like I'm helping other people. It just seems like that's just how reality is rolling on. Like, I'm pretty sure we're helping people just by doing this podcast. But the intention of jumping on a podcast with you wasn't to help people, wasn't to help you or myself. It's just the course of the least resistance. It felt right to say yes to your podcast, and I did it. And that's how I do most things. It's just like, okay, there's no resistance here. Let's do it. As long as you're abiding in nature's course of the least resistance, people are going to be helped. Because then you're not transforming or transferring your own resistance, even if that resistance has good intention. You don't want to transform or transfer that resistance to other people, because that's just creating more resistance. So when you don't have a resistance, anything you do is going to be helping other people, even if you're just pumping gas at a gas station. Some people take a more active role in helping other people. Sure, that's great. Like, either become spiritual teachers, or there are a lot of very realized gurus that are really interested in political matters, and that's great. If there's no resistance in that, if there's no ego attached to that, then that's great. But this realized being could just be doing something else, could be a personal trainer. And the people that he will be helping out around him at the gym or whatever is going to benefit from his radiance, because he doesn't have any resistance. If he doesn't have any resistance, whatever you do with him, the resistance will be dissolved as well. That's how transmissions occur.
The word transmission is indeed right. Like, sometimes people try to convey something through content of their words or whatever, but the real transmission happens in that which you embody. When we go back to the metaphor of, like, let's say you're in your deathbed and somebody is next to you, one is trying to save you and help you and ease the experience for you, and the other one is just okay. The one is subconsciously transmitting the belief to you that you need help, and someone who needs help is someone who is not okay. And that's what you're transmitting at that moment.
Yeah, you're transmitting the fact that everything is okay. Because the experience that everything is okay is the experience of non-resistance. But in the midst of non-resistance, you can still do things to help other people. You can still do things to change the world. But that will be done through the course of the least resistance, which is love.
That metaphor of the least resistance, and I always visualize stuff, so I always see a river. Sometimes a river flows with ease, and then it's trying to find its path through the creek, through the rocks, and sometimes it has more resistance, sometimes not, and it flows better. That metaphor has helped me to navigate through immense suffering, and let me elaborate on that and tell you why. In intense moments of suffering, sometimes the mind chatters more, and it says, like, okay, how do I navigate through this? I'm suffering so intensely and whatever. And the metaphor of the river helped me to come to the conclusion that all I have to do is just breathe. Let life flow and find its way. I'm experiencing a lot of resistance right now, but the nature of life is that it will flow by itself. It just flows. And yes, it's experiencing resistance, but that resistance is the way at that moment.
Yes, exactly. That's another way to look at it. Even the resistance is empty. Even the resistance don't have inherent existence. That's another way to say that even imperfection is perfect. It's only the mind that gives label to things as being bad or good. When nature is just unfolding on its own, that doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. There are sunny days. There are rainy days. There are windy days. Right? But for nature itself, it's all part of nature. It's all perfect. It's only the mind that says sunny day is better, but rainy day is not.
Frank Yang, you truly have helped me in so many ways. Like, I think because of you, I started to become okay with the idea of excellence, because for me, always throughout my teenage years, I had this obsession with excelling in particular domains of life. But it always felt like a fantasy because no one around me was excelling. Like a lot of people were so okay with mediocrity or mediocrity. I don't know how to pronounce it, but like a mediocre life, not realizing our full potential. And then I saw you, like, I assume that a lot of people that watch this podcast haven't seen your videos, but man, I tried to explain this in the intro, but I didn't even come across all the points. The way you play violin, it's such a high level. The way you play piano, your bodybuilding, the potential that you realized, because you were a lifetime netty, right? You still are.
Yeah, never took steroids.
Yeah, and then also the way you sharpened your intellect, and your editing skills. Like you edit all your videos yourself as well, right?
Yep.
All of this, like excelling in so many domains, said to me, like you were the embodiment, like it is okay to stand out. It is okay to chase that. It's almost this masculine, intrinsic, animalistic desire to conquer, to become great, you know? And I always felt at war with this part of me because I felt like there was no place in this world for that intrinsic, animalistic desire to become great. And I truly, from the bottom of my heart, you know, really, I want to thank you that you transferred that. Something clicked when I watched your videos, that it is okay to excel in particular stuff. And that's why I say you're one of the reasons that this whole podcast is here, because it took a lot of energy and a lot of courage for me to, you know, walk on an authentic path, find my passion and do what I do. So, yeah, man, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. You're an awesome human being.
I will say that part of me has been dissolved, but still, I'm still doing all those things that you might call excellence, but I'm not identified with them. But before, there was a really strong desire to want to excel in everything, and that created a lot of suffering. But again, that was just the role I was playing. I played that role to such a large degree that sort of like just blew up. Itself kind of just self-deconstructed itself, right? So yeah, that's just going back to how we were talking about integration. It's like you don't really need to let go of anything. You only have to let go of your identification to things. There's no more self here that's solidifying itself around bodybuilding or film editing. And I can do it better now because now it's just nature doing it. Yeah. I think it's important to clarify what the word emptiness means real quick, because that word is so tricky. People hear this, they might be like, oh, it's just nihilism, or like, oh, there's nothing there. What is he talking about? He's talking about this like blankness, right? But the easiest way to understand emptiness is that, first of all, emptiness doesn't mean things don't exist. It means they lack inherent existence. So everything is like a hologram, but the hologram is still there. It's like the rainbow. Is the rainbow there or not there? It's both. And the second point about emptiness is that everything is a mental construction. The third way to understand emptiness is everything is codependent arising. Yeah. So you are empty and I am empty, but together we create each other. So that's where compassion comes in. The interconnectedness of everything. If everything is empty, then everything is interconnected, because things only arise through causes and conditionings. The reason why seeing emptiness is so important is because when you verify things, when you perceive things as solid to have an inherent existence, and that thing could be money, could be pussies, or it could be God consciousness. The moment you verify it, you can cling on to it. You can grasp it in this suffering.
Dukkha, as the Buddha would like to call it.
So, but recognize emptiness actually give you more spontaneous power to fulfill that potentiality. That's why like bodybuilding is empty to me now. There's no inherent existence in it. But then why not have fun doing it? It's just like recognizing everything as a dream. Now you can lucid dream. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the right metaphor, to lucid dream. Lucid means like your awareness is fully there.
Not to step outside of the dream, because there's nothing but the dream actually. When you step outside of the dream, that's just another dream. Because everything is a mental fabrication. But that's the beauty of it. You're constantly co-creating the universe with the universe. And with each other.
That's even what the classified CIA documents say, that we live in a holographic reality and that we co-create this reality, and that it's psychic by nature. Yeah. Even on a metaphysical point of view, you know, like the whole reality that I'm creating right now, the voice that I'm hearing right now through the screen, the visual input that I'm getting, everything is created by electrical impulses within my brain. And the whole reason that I am fabricating this reality is because of the cumulative sum of all the neural impulses that are firing in my brain right now, and they are co-creating a reality.
Yeah, and not just your brain, but billions of other brains that have billions and billions of neural networks. Then even just take something like a tree, for example. Look at the infinite webs on infinite webs of causes and conditionings of this ingress net, where every single point is connected to every other point. That conditionality has to arise in that particular moment for that tree to appear the way it is to you. The rainbow is my favorite analogy to understand dependent origination and emptiness. Right? All the conditionality have to appear at that precise moment for the rainbow to appear. If you take away just one of those conditionality, there's no rainbow. But guess what? Yeah, this rainbow's all the way down because even the conditionalities is empty. Quantum physics kind of proved this already, right? The observer's effect. Things only arise through interactions. What's in the atom? Vibrations, empty space. So things are just vibrating through and with each other. So another way to describe the natural state is God is just DJing to itself. Everything is music.
God is DJing to itself. I like that one.
Then what is music? Music is completely abstract, right? It's there but not there. You can experience it and you can feel emotions to listen to a piece of music. You can create stories on top of stories with music. But where is the music? You can't locate it. You can't touch it. You can't locate anything in your direct experience. Visually, emotionally, sensorially, physically, you can't locate anything. Everything's coreless. But things do arise through conditionality. That's the magic of reality.
I think music is one of the highest forms of art. Like, personally, I've never learned to play an instrument. I do not know the theory about music. I just like music. But I can imagine when you learn the craft of, let's say, playing the violin, your nervous system becomes attuned to the instrument. And like the instrument and your vessel, like your body, in a sense, melt. They become one.
Yes, that's a very good example.
And it becomes a vehicle for the music to flow through it. It is by like it's almost like a sexual experience, right?
Yes. Very good point.
Okay, before we wrap it up, I know we got a lot of like spiritual insights, and you dropped a lot of like spiritual nuggets. But why do you think a lot of, especially like young men, as soon as they get into puberty and whatever, they get so fascinated by the art of picking up women and seducing women and just women in general?
Well, I did that too, so I understand completely.
But how does that relate to like all the spiritual concepts that we just talked about?
Like I said earlier, they're just middlemen, right? They want to pick up girls because they want to feel whole. They want to feel loved. But they don't realize their true nature is already whole. It's already love. So this intrinsic desire to be whole is embedded in all of us. And it's also biology too. In order to reproduce, in order to manifest the most powerful force in existence through the sexual energy, one of the ways to do it is to pick up girls and having sex. Now, the problem is not that per se, is that if you're using that to suppress another part of you, or if you're using that to bypass another part of you that you don't want to look at, or if you become addicted to it, you become identified with it, that's what's creating the suffering. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with picking up girls or doing anything for that matter. Right? If you're hurting other people in the process doing it, then that could be a problem. So picking up girls is a very intrinsic desire for men, and like the desire for sex, to feel whole. That's innate.
Even though the art of picking up women can be an endeavor that you can get lost in, what is it that young men can learn out of this art?
What's that?
What is it that young men, like, even though you can get lost in picking up and it becomes like an ego thing, what is it that young men still can learn from it? And like, I know there's like a spiritual side to it, but on a more like earthly, mundane side, what can people and young men especially learn from this art?
Yeah, well, you can learn to face your fears, because like it's for a lot of young men, the fear is picking up a beautiful woman. So you can actually learn a lot about yourself, about human psychology, about facing your own demons and your own limitations, how to communicate better, how not to hurt other people in the process. There's a lot of lessons that could be learned, not just from pickup, but from doing anything. Yeah. And then, like I said at the beginning of the call, if you don't get lost in it for the rest of your life, it's a very good way for you to dissolve the ego. Because once you've done something enough and it doesn't satisfy you, it's going to dissolve. You're going to realize it's, this lack of intrinsic existence.
Like this podcast for me meant the world to me. It felt like a childhood dream coming true. And I know that there are still so many topics that we haven't covered yet and that we could talk about. We could save that for the podcast if it's ever happening in real life, the in-person podcast.
I can feel it happening, bro. Like, yeah, I would love to go to Amsterdam, yeah.
Yeah, likewise. Really, it was such an honor for me to speak to you, and your contribution has, meant a lot for me and my viewers as well. Because I think the people that watch my podcast, like a lot of people don't know you, and I know a lot of seeds will have been planted in their minds in a very good way. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. One other childhood dream that I had was in honor of Z's to be flexing with you on cam. I think we could make that happen.
Oh shit, let's do it.
Yeah, man. I'm not in my fittest state. I haven't worked out too much, but I can't miss out on this opportunity. Wait.
See, still pretty good, right?
And you're 39, right?
Yeah.
Brother, your physique is insane. You inspired me to get shredded as fuck, really.
Thanks.
When I started to watch your videos, that was the first time when I was very, very thin in the beginning. And because of your videos, I started to get jacked, started to have my first, I don't know, like in kilos, it was like 230 deadlift. And it started to progress because you did your raw deadlift, the crazy one. It was also like 2-something kilos. And you inspired me a lot, man. You're fucking awesome, Frank.
Remember when we talk about like co-creation? Like, this is a co-creation process. You are inspired by me and I'm inspired by you. Even if we don't consciously say that. Still, why did I create all those videos? And why did you pick it up with your own particular brain, but not another person or not another brain? Because in a sense, we're already co-creating each other. So it's like, I can't take credit for it.
We're going to wrap it up. People that don't follow you, go follow Frank Yang. He has his YouTube channel. Everything will be in the description. His personal website, his Instagram. Are there any other things that you're working on right now that people should look at?
Doing a lot of one-on-one coaching calls. If people want to, talk more about meditation techniques, or if they're on the spiritual path, they want to know how to navigate it. I do coaching for that. And I also coach fitness too. So that's what I do.
Okay, so anyone wanting to get shredded and or wants
shred the
some
mind and the
spiritual
body. If you want to shred the mind and the body simultaneously, you can come to me.
Frank Yang is your guy. Okay, guys, everything will be in the description. Thank you so much for watching. This podcast was phenomenal. I still have to digest and process this. So thank you, Frank, and see you next time, brother.
Thank you, bro.